This is Ian Carey with SE Scoops, and I'm on the line with MLW's National Openweight Champion, Alexander Hammerstone. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, unfortunately, the first question, something that's affecting all of us. How are you dealing with life in quarantine?
It's rough. I'm not going to lie. I'm trying to keep things in perspective and realize that there's a lot of people that are a lot worse off than me right now. So I try to remind myself of that. I have a house that I'm not worried about losing my home. I'm just, dealing with cabin fever, being pent up, not being able to do what I like to do. I'm the kind of guy who likes to chase goals and keep climbing mountains. And if I'm not working towards something, I feel very lost and I start getting kind of that depression, And right now it's very hard to chase something when I'm not really allowed to leave the four walls that I'm stuck in. So,
right. Do you kind of feel like, your career's sort of been put on hold a little bit?
Yeah, but we got to keep in perspective that, hopefully on the other end of this, it means people are just that more excited to see what's next. And, I know firsthand MLW had a lot of good things planned. So, we're trying to get through this as best we can. It keeps feeling like it's 2 more weeks, then 2 more weeks, then 2 more weeks. And I just can't wait for the time when they finally say, okay, we're ready to start rocking and rolling.
Yeah, let's hope it's sooner rather than later. But
of course.
No, not that there's ever a good time, but your career was really on a steep upward trajectory in the last, year and a half, certainly since you've been with MLW. Now, you debuted with Major League Wrestling in January of 2019. You won the National Openweight title just a few months later. Can you talk a little bit about your first year and a half with MLW so far?
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. A lot of people who, like you said, it's really the last year and a half I've probably blown up and made more progress than the previous 8 years combined.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people might not be familiar with, all the work I did leading up to it. But, I worked for TV programs, whether it was Paragon Pro Wrestling or Ring Warriors or local TV, in addition to traveling all over the country and stuff. So by the time it was time to move on to MLW, I had a lot of experience working my way up, and I was ready to, put my best foot forward and make something happen. So the first couple shows, it was hard because I'm working in new states where people are kind of unfamiliar with me. Mm-hmm. And the people that had kind of seen me, I had just changed up my look. So some people were like, oh yeah, I didn't even know you were the same guy. So it was interesting, but luckily I got, thrown into some good stories right off the bat, and it was just, a couple of weeks of TV before we were starting to form the dynasty. Mm-hmm. And then once that got going, it was like there was a rocket on our butts, and it's been, like you said, a upward trajectory ever since.
Yeah, well, the dynasty is definitely a focal part of Major League Wrestling right now. Certainly the lifestyles of the rich and dynastic segments. Have you done anything like those before MLW, where you're in these scenes with guys like Richard Holiday, MJF, or was that kind of new for you when you got to MLW?
I was definitely, I've always been a guy who loved doing character stuff and promo stuff. So doing, promo stuff and, backstage vignettes, stuff of that nature, that alone wasn't new, but kind of the way we were going with it was new, because for a lot of years, I presented myself a lot different. I tried really hard to play a certain type of pro wrestler, and I got kind of pigeonholed into like this big tough guy, I'm going to beat you up, type of character. And it wasn't one dimensional, but it was very limited in what I can do with it. And finally, right before I signed with MLW, I just kind of threw that away and said, I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to do what I like. I'm going to, try to do what I enjoy, try to do what I think would be entertaining, and not really follow any guidelines that I feel I'm supposed to follow. And it just worked so great that I got paired up with the dynasty during that time, because most of the best parts of the dynasty were us just playing off each other. And it wasn't a new thing to do promos, but it was a new thing to just be yourself and enjoy it and watch things kind of blossom in their own natural way.
Mm-hmm. I think it was on the last episode of Fusion, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, you and Richard Holiday were shown in a Tijuana hotel room. I think you were hungover because you went to a donkey show the night before. I did research what a Tijuana donkey show was before this call. I think I'll probably not explain what it is. But, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
Well, these are like really entertaining scenes. You get a Lifestyles of the Rich and Dynastic almost every episode of Fusion. What is the creative process for these scenes? Are you going in with the script? Are you improvising a little? How do these segments come together?
Well, I think there was a general idea of what direction the dynasty was going to go in when it was first formed. And then it just took, wild left turn after wild left turn. And then pretty soon it became its own strange monster. And, at first it was like they were trying to, tighten up the leash and control it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then like once it got out of control, they just kind of realized like, okay, we can't stop these guys. Like they're going to do whatever they want to do. And, a lot of the, one-liners, or segments that people are fondly remember were things that we were specifically told, like, you probably shouldn't do that, But luckily, starting out, I showed up to the company with, wanting to be respectful and all that. But I'd say Max, MJF, really had a good part in it because he was the type of guy who we'd shoot a promo and it'd turn out way off the rails and way far away from probably what they intended it to be. And it was hilarious, but they go, okay, maybe we try another one without, and then he'd just go, nope, that's it. And he'd walk away and he'd be gone. So there was no, okay, we're going to reshoot that. It was just, so from that point on, it very much became like the dynasty is going to do the dynasty,
Yeah.
We're going to do what we think is right. We're going to say the silly things we want to say, and there's not much you could do to stop it. And if you did, it would probably be less entertaining.
Well, we've seen. It looks like you've got a new challenger for your title, Mance Warner. Definitely at the tapings in Tijuana, it seems like the Dynasty and Mance Warner's rivalry has really hit a new level. What do you think fans can expect from a program between you and Mance Warner?
Well, I will say this is Mance is very over with the fans. He has his legion of followers who are very into what he does. I just happen to not be one of those people who's into what he does. So I don't know, part of me like really wants to hype up some kind of insane, no holds barred, tables, ladders, chairs, weapons galore match, and then spend 25 minutes chain wrestling them just to piss everyone off. But who knows? Because that's the thing. That's I'm not going to say Mance, that's what he has to do. That's just what he's best known for, is getting violent, getting, that style of match. The last time we were in Tijuana, he's going through flaming tables and hitting people with car hoods. That's not my forte. That's not my style. And the thing is, if he wants to wrestle for my championship, I don't see why he should get to call a shot. So it'll be interesting to see what direction that goes in. Maybe they'll get to see that side of Hammer for the first time ever, but if it's up to me, I'm just going to powerbomb him until he dies. So we'll see.
So last summer, you got to compete in the N1 with Pro Wrestling Noah. You scored some, big victories over some big name talent over there. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like wrestling with Noah?
That's, still to this day, isolated like experiences. That's probably my favorite period of time in pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like I got so much better so quickly. And it really just like, as much as I love to be an entertainer and, I like to focus on looking cool and having cool music and cutting an interesting promo and all these other aspects while I was in Japan, like that stuff really takes a back seat to what you do between the bells,
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like coming as a guy who sometimes gets, improperly labeled as a body guy, or this or that, or just booked because of the way he looks. Or it was really cool to just be in situations where I'm wrestling the best wrestlers in the world for 25 minutes and having these matches where I'm just giving it everything I got and like walking away feeling like, man, I just kicked ass, like, and being really proud of the body of work I did out there. So it was phenomenal. Japanese wrestling is like way different than what they do in the States. And I definitely fell in love with it, because at first, like, saying I was going to stay for the period of time I stayed for was like very daunting, and something that I was not sure if I wanted to do. I more or less said yes just to be a good company man. I wanted to, NLW presented the opportunity. I said yes, more so just to be like a good, representative of the company. But I was really nervous about being over there that long. But once I got going, I fell in love with it, and I can't wait to go back, to be honest.
Well, hopefully things will start back up there, in a few months or something as well. But
yeah.
So it's interesting because you were in Japan last summer, and you've done now shows in Mexico with AAA and MLW. So you're sort of getting a lot of different styles in the last year. Is that challenging for you as a performer to wrestle people from various different backgrounds?
There was a point when that was very challenging and very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say a few years ago, like, being in those different situations was like a super uncomfortable situation for me, because it was just like, man, especially sometimes there's a language barrier, and you're just like, all these things come up that people don't take into account. But as time has gone on, I thrive in those situations. Like, those are like, I love wrestling people from different styles, because I don't try to make them adapt to my style. I try to adapt to their style. So it's really cool, because, if you look at even just like a month worth of TV on MLW, you're watching me wrestle a strong style match against T-Hawk. Then a couple weeks later, I'm having, wrestling Laredo Kid, one of the best luchadors in the world. And it's just, I love to display my ability to adapt to all these different situations, to all these different challenges, to all these different styles. And that's the type of wrestler I want to be. I want to be the journeyman who goes across the world and earns the respect not only of his fans but his peers as well.
Right on. So there's a lot of diversity of talent on the MLW roster as well. We've seen Dynasty, we've feuded with the Von Erichs, the Hart Foundation. Are there some wrestlers on the MLW roster that you haven't gotten to work with yet that you'd really like to get in there with?
For sure. Off the top of my head, I mean, obviously the one that everyone talks about, and the one that I'm going to talk about first, is Jacob Fatu.
Yeah.
He's the top dog with the company. So of course I want to wrestle him, not only to wrestle him, but to take that damn belt from him. But in addition to that, like some of the, like, Myron Reed is another one who I watch him, and he just blows me away with the stuff he's able to do in the ring. I've been pretty lucky to wrestle most of our full-time roster. We do bring in, some guys on a date-by-date basis that aren't necessarily under contract with the company or with the company full-time. But as far as our contracted roster, I've been very lucky to wrestle most of them. But off the top of my head, Myron and Fatu come to mind as two guys I haven't got to wrestle with MLW that I think would be awesome matches.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the two other singles champions in the promotion, right? The middleweight champion, the heavyweight champion. Yeah. You're the open weight champion. Exactly. Just makes sense.
It speaks for yourself. When you get to that level, you don't get there by chance.
Yeah. So you got started in your pro career around 2013. So, early 20s. What inspired you to get into pro wrestling?
I mean, I think most people who do it loved it as a kid at some point. Me growing up watching Kane and DX and Stone Cold and all those guys in the Attitude Era was something that I loved since I was a kid. And I kind of grew out of it in my teenage years, and I got into playing music. I was a musician.
All right.
So I playing live music. I just always loved to be an entertainer. I love to be in front of crowds. I love to be the center of attention. After being a musician, I got into bodybuilding, and I, started building my body. And then I was like, man, like I like showing off my body, but I didn't like competing as a bodybuilder was like, it's not really my thing, but I liked the athletic endeavor. And then I was like, man, I want to entertain people, but I don't want to just flex on a stage once a year. And I was like, man, I'd really like to wrestle. And then I started kind of looking into it. It seemed like not realistic, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And finally, once I headed that direction, it's been pretty much full steam ahead ever since.
Okay. So you mentioned some of your favorites from the Attitude Era, Kane, DX. Who's on the Alexander Hammerstone Mount Rushmore of wrestling? Who are the top wrestlers in all of history, in your opinion?
Oh, man. How are you going to do me? That's a hard question. I don't even want to answer this. I feel like I'm going to be quoted for it, and it's going to haunt me. Definitely from a wrestling standpoint, wrestling matches that I loved watching that I will go back and watch over and over again. I find Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar are definitely guys who had matches who I'll watch any Kurt Angle match. I'll watch any match from Brock Lesnar's original run. Besides that, I'd say maybe Jericho's up there.
Mm-hmm.
Just as rewatchability of what they put out. But nobody captured my Triple H stands out as a guy who growing up the big larger than life muscles. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at what I looked like a couple of years ago. Pretty much almost like a budget version of Triple H. So I think those four first off the top of my head, but there's so many more for so many other reasons. I always look at wrestling as a multifaceted thing. So there's some guys who I love just because the energy they brought or the charisma they brought or the promos. And then there's some guys who it's strictly the wrestling aspect of it. So it's really hard to narrow down to Mount Rushmore, 4 people, because there's wrestling is such a multifaceted art form, a multifaceted performance that there's so many factors to take into account that it's really hard to even say a greatest or even a top 10. It's it becomes it's definitely very subjective.
Oh, totally. Now, if you could have a dream match against any wrestler, current or past, who's your dream match against?
Alexa Bliss.
Alexa Bliss.
Bra and panties match, for sure.
Bra and panties match with Alexa Bliss. Awesome.
I'm really worried that quote's going to get canceled or something.
No, I don't think it will. I don't think so.
No, to be honest, I've just never been dream match question is something that everyone likes to ask, but it's just never been one I like to answer because as you go on, I don't look at guys and think of man, I really want to wrestle this guy or that guy as much as because it growing up, there were certain matches that I would have thought I'd never have, but now I've had those matches and they're behind me. And as it's happening and even in retrospect, it's man, that was I don't really think of it as a dream match, but for example, if you would have told me when I first started wrestling, hey, what do you think about the idea of wrestling Marufuji at Karukan Hall someday? I was that would never happen. That's a dream match. And then lo and behold, that happened last summer. Yeah. It's things like that. So it's I don't really get caught up in thinking that way. I'm just I just always want to wrestle the best. And the best is always changing. The people that are the hungriest are always changing.
Well, that's great. So assuming pro wrestling kind of gets back going later this year in some form or another, what do you think that fans can look forward to the most about your career when things get back going?
Well, it's not only me. There's probably a lot of people that feel the exact same as me. But there's a large population of wrestlers right now who are at home playing video games, getting fat, out of shape, and they just can't wait to do wrestling again because they like wrestling. But then there's a group of us that are just like me, who are determined, who want to get after it, who are working out whatever way they can at home and just so hungry. And we've never had to go through something like this where people are healthy, ready to go, but just aren't able to wrestle. Usually if you have a time away, it's because there's an outside factor that's keeping you away. That's, something like an injury or, something of that nature. But now, like, you have all these guys who are just like, gnawing at the bit to get back at it. So all those guys, and I'm definitely one of them, when they come back, we're just going to be balls of fire, ready to just give you our best matches, ready to, pretty much, my mentality is like step up or get out. Like, I'm not slowing down for anybody. Like, I'm not, going to take it easy on anybody. I'm more than ever going to be unapologetically kicking ass. And if you're on the other side of the ring and you can't keep up, I'm sorry.
That's awesome. So just, keeping in shape, keeping hungry for when it gets going again. And hopefully MLW will be able to run live events or film TV events later in the year, hopefully. But thanks so much for doing this interview. Really appreciate it. Just before we go, do you have anything left that you want to say to your fans out there, or people looking forward to seeing you wrestle again once this is over?
Yeah, for sure. Just give me a follow on the social media if you don't already. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex Hammerstone, Facebook Alexander Hammerstone. Pro Wrestling Tees, Alexander Hammerstone, and just during these strange times, I try my best to stay as active as I can on social media, on Twitter, interact with fans, give some kind of content, and that'll be the first way to not only see what's coming up next, but maybe I'll be posting some throwback matches, stuff of that nature. So, because I know we're all bored, we all can't wait to get back to it. So that's going to be the best place to get your information from your boy Hammer.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And remember to check out MLW Fusion Saturday nights on beIN Sports. It's also posted to YouTube. The AAA MLW Super Series continues this weekend. Thanks so much, Alexander Hammerstone. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, man. You take care.
Cool.